Hey there, welcome to episode 433 of the Find Your Food Voice podcast. Today, my team and I are breaking down the American Next Top Model documentary. Let's get to it. Hey there, I am Julie Duffy Dillon, registered dietitian and your host of the Find Your Food Voice podcast. Today is a diet culture IRL. This is the type of episode where we take something that is happening in real time and examine it and discuss it and how it relates to finding your food voice. We had, of course, another topic in mind for today, but as Coleen always says, life presents to you many different options for diet culture IRLs because, well, dieting is hardcore again. So anyway, today we are breaking down the recent documentary, sharing the behind the scenes on the very popular early reality show, America's Next Top Model. And what you're going to hear from me and the team is basically like where we were when it was on, what we thought back then compared to what we think now, especially after watching this documentary. So we are going to get to that in just a minute. Quick housekeeping for us before we get to the episode. Remember that this is the second to last episode of Find Your Food Voice. We have one more episode left before we close this chapter. And this last episode, we've been working on behind the scenes. We're really excited to bring it to you. We hope it does the same that it is going to do for us to just help us have some closure and help us continuing with the process of writing letters to food. There'll be lots of those in this episode. And you're also going to hear from listeners just like you who provided us some feedback about their experiences with the show. And if you are wondering, like, how the heck do I stay in touch with you, Julie, after the show ends? Well, I hope you can stay along for the ride as it changes. And the best way to stay connected with me right now is on Substack. I'm not doing a lot of social media these days, but Substack is where I mostly am. And that way you can be on my email list and catch any announcements as they come up, because I am working on some pretty cool things behind the scenes that I am not ready to announce yet, but I definitely want to stay connected to you. So on Substack, if you go to findyourfoodvoice.substack.com, you will stay in the loop. All right, enough of all of that. We are going to take a very quick sponsor break, and then we are going to get a chance to chat with Coleen and Rachel and me, and we're just going to discuss all the things about America's Next Top Model. Hello, team.
Hi.
Welcome to our last Diet Culture IRL.
Can't believe it.
Can't believe it. But we got a great topic.
We really do.
Yes.
Colleen says the universe provides.
The
Again.
universe provides yet again.
Mm-hmm.
So I am very excited to talk about this because I don't know where you all were when this show aired, but we're here chatting about America's Next Top Model. It is all over again, all the chat feeds, Instagram, TikTok, everywhere. Everyone's talking about it again, but for a different reason, because now there is this documentary on Netflix, I don't even know if we can call it a tell-all, but it's just a short 3 episodes, and we've all watched this documentary and decided this would be an interesting topic for us to chat about. So we're starting from the origin of this story, which is where we all were when we first saw America's Next Top Model. And I can't believe it started in 2003, Julie, I think is what you shared, which is wild because in 2003, I was in middle school, and obviously some pretty formative years of my life, right?
Yes.
And I remember watching this all the time. It was I ate and I was breathing and thinking that I was practicing my smize in the mirror. I was okay,
the smize.
I am going on America's Next Top Model. I'm going to be the first plus size winner to win this show. And what's interesting at the time is I think when I was watching this show, I would not have been considered plus size, but in my mind already, I was plus size. So it was just, I think just thinking about, where I was at the time, and like, I can't believe I was allowed to watch it. Like, now looking back, I'm like, wow, I don't even know. Like, I can't remember if my parents were watching it or if it was like just me watching it and being like, wow, like, this is high fashion. Like, this is like what I want to. And, if you've heard me talk before, I thought like I was going to be famous or something, like, and so I thought like, wow, this is my gateway into like fame if I can become like the first. So I was practicing my runway walk. I was getting up when Miss J walked. Like, I was doing all the things. And
Miss J was great.
I just remember thinking like, wow, this is so, I just loved, like, I loved how glossy it was. I loved like the clothes. I don't remember being as like into the drama or like the, like the like real like house whatever feel of the show. I remember the like photo shoots and the like clothes and the makeup and like showing the like final photos. Those were the things I remembered, and how the judges talked about the women like in those final photos. And then rewatching or watching this documentary, I was like, oh wow, there was a lot of problematic stuff that I like did not register or clock at the time. So Julie, Rachel, I'm curious to hear about like where you were during the beginnings of America's Next Top Model.
Rachel, why don't you go? Because I know you were a similar age.
Similar age. So I too was in middle school. I remember watching it like after school, right? Like I got home before my mom did, and that and like Gilmore Girls were like the two things that I would watch like after school. And I don't know if like my mom and I ever had an explicit conversation like this show is inappropriate or, like something you shouldn't be watching. But I knew enough to know that like this wasn't something that like I should watch when my mom was around, not because she was openly like diet culture is bad, but she was very anti any sort of like reality shows, things like that. So I remember watching it. So like I wasn't watching it like when episodes aired. I was watching like the reruns anytime it was on.
Okay. I was wondering how you saw it after school. Okay.
I can't remember what channel it was. The reruns were popping on. Yes, but I don't like when they were on rerun. Like, but so I wasn't watching like an entire season, but I was getting enough of it that like I was very invested. And I remember, like, unlike Coleen, there was no part of me that wanted to be famous or a model or anything like that. And so like I didn't want to be them in that way. But I remember wanting to be like skinny and pretty, like already in middle school. Like I thought I wasn't pretty and I thought I was too big. And at the time, like Coleen, like I wouldn't have been considered plus size by any means at that point in my life. But I already remember being like, life would be better if I was pretty like them and skinny like them.
Yeah. I'm trying to think about where I was. So 2003, because I watched the first season, but I think I watched it later because in 2003 I was in grad school, and that was the one drawback of grad school is I didn't have time to watch TV. I feel like that was like the one thing that suffered. But I definitely, like, as I was watching the documentary, I remembered so much of the drama, which is interesting that you said that, Coleen, because I was like, that was the thing that I remembered the most. I also remembered the photo reveals. I was like, oh yeah, I remember this one and this one. I can't believe how much that was imprinted in my brain's memory. But this was a time in 2003, 2004 was when I was first getting exposed to non-diet, not necessarily weight inclusive, but like non-diet work. So I was like, ooh, there's some problems here. Like, there's some, and yet also at the time, I remember thinking, wow, this is like a show that's actually showing diversity, not necessarily of size, other types of diversity. But now, of course, we'll talk about now watching it through our eyes today, how like, really no. But at the time that was considered, because there was more than one person of color on the show. So that made it so diverse, basically, because that was just not a part of it. But hearing it, the Gilmore Girls alongside of it, I'm like, yeah, that tracks. Like that was basically like early 2000s diet culture bullshit. And as the seasons went on, I stopped watching it because then I was like, oh my God, this is like this is so problematic. It took a couple seasons though for me to get to that point, but yeah, it felt like after it was like the second and third season and I was seeing clients with eating disorders, it just felt like such a push for more disordered eating behavior. And it was one that my clients and I would often talk about. Yeah, let's leave the room when that comes on, or see if you can advocate for yourself to turn it off, because it sounds like it's just going to make things harder for you to make choices for yourself. Yeah. So yeah, that's what was going on. I mean, this was a time where, like early 2000s too was when, I wonder if you all were exposed to this. I have a feeling you were, because you were in middle school or a little earlier. Do you all remember seeing a PowerPoint presentation that was really famous that showed BMI changes over the 1990s? Or they showed the BMI and like changes of the US population in like the 70s, 80s, 90s. And it went through all the 90s by year. And then all of a sudden it went from like maybe 1/3 of the population having a higher BMI to all of a sudden it was like 90% or something like alarming. So that came out, it was either in like 2000, 2001. So like that was the height of like so much of like the epidemic kind of fear, alarming type of stuff. And so having this show where people were told to look smaller and rewarded for looking like very, very small. Yeah, it just made things a lot harder.
I remember too, like during the times that I was watching this, like people joking with me or making comments to me that like I could never have like a disordered or like eating disorder problem. Like I specifically remember the comments that like, one of the women would be eating whatever she was eating and like make a comment about that. And then like people that were close to me were like, oh, well, you would never have that problem. And like, I just remember like that's what I remember from watching the show more than anything. And so I just think it's really interesting how even though Julie at the time you knew it was problematic, like it took me how long to realize that that was problematic.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess like we spoke a little bit about like what our thoughts were back then, kind of along with, what we were doing when we first watched it or where we were. So we've got a little bit of the foundation of, how it was when we were watching. And now this Netflix documentary kind of comes into play, right? And we get a second shot at looking at this in today's day and age and hearing from some of the lead voices from that series share a little bit more about some of the behind the scenes and what was going on. Rachel or Julie, do you want to start with like some of your reactions to not only watching the documentary, but maybe some of where it was lacking or where you had wished to see more, or maybe what they did right?
Yeah. The thing that struck me watching it, and this is kind of like what I missed. Yeah, what I missed when I was watching it the first time was how exploitive it was of the contestants. And I think, hearing the two of you describe middle school reactions to watching it, it really just showed for me how this was the generation's like social media. Like if you were watching like YouTube or you were on Instagram or TikTok, like this was kind of like that experience, it was just like, as an adult, I was kind of like, meh, kind of checked out a little bit because it was for younger people, right? And I think it was so harmful that people were creating a TV show and it's like a business. Like this is something like it was something that was making money for folks. And the people who were recruited to be these models were like the product in a sense, and they were like a pawn. And like I like remember like it was yesterday watching all the account of was it Chandra? What was the woman's name with blonde hair who was that? I don't know if it was cycle 1, but it was one of the early cycles, and she had a boyfriend, and then she got really drunk in Italy and she was assaulted. Thank you, Shandi. And then her telling her boyfriend what happened. Like I can remember all that, like watching it in real time. But then when I saw it on this documentary, I was like, why did they let her why did they let her do this? Like, why did they film her getting, I mean, assault is just the first word I thought of to describe it. I don't know if she described it as that. And then telling her boyfriend, like all these like very personal things. And I know they're on reality TV, but like, seriously, that was horrible. But yeah, very exploited and they didn't care. And the thing that made me so sad was that not Tyra, but the men that she had hired to help to, coach people and things like that, they seemed more like saying sorry about like how people were exploited. And it didn't seem like she really did. And that was disappointing to me, like the lack of accountability. I wish there was more accountability across the board, but especially from Tyra Banks.
Yeah. I mean, I think I'm watching the whole documentary. I also want to point out, I was kind of reflecting and like typing up my reflections this morning and in prep for this, and discovered that apparently a week ago, Eek also came out with a documentary.
Really?
Or like a docuseries. I'm not entirely sure, but there's also
there's another one to watch.
There's another one that I haven't watched, and you both look surprised. Neither of you have watched it.
No, yeah.
But and so I just want to note that like none of what any of us is saying is with that in context, and I have no idea what that's about. But watching the documentary, I mean, I was like angry, I was disgusted. It was just really interesting. Like Coleen, I don't remember when I originally watched it, I don't remember like the drama and the reality bit of it. I remember the photo shoots and the modeling bit of it. And so to like kind of reflect on that, the Shandi story like really stuck with me. Like and I believe at this point she does like call it sexual assault.
Okay.
But like the fact that Ken, what's his name, like the executive producer, was like, well, it was real, like it was a documentary. And so like we told them we would be filming regardless. And just like the idea that like they facilitated, like, these people haven't eaten, they're exhausted, let's pump alcohol into them and then like encourage them to get in a hot tub with these guys. And like just like how much the combination of like, well, it's just a documentary, so we were going to keep filming no matter what, and the like facilitation of certain interactions like that. Or I believe her name was Kenya, like in South Africa, who was like being harassed by the who was working with, and how she was like blamed and was like critiqued for saying something like, she was at fault. Or like there was another model who I can't remember, lost someone to gun violence, and then like was her shoot was to be like pretend to be a victim of gun violence. And it's like very clear from watching the documentary, like they intentionally put those scenarios together to get a reaction to make good TV. And so that was just like really upsetting. I also think before watching the documentary, if you had asked me like, what do you think about America's Next Top Model? I probably pretty easily could have been like, well, like from a diet culture perspective, that was probably pretty fucked up. Like I could have done that before seeing the documentary, but like also thinking about the photo shoots, like being reminded of the photo shoots, like the one where they were like, go pretend to be unhoused, or we're going to do blackface on all of you.
Yes.
The like the violence one, just the absurd and highly problematic photo shoots that they were choosing to do. And that coupled with Tyra Banks's, and all of them, but especially Tyra, like it felt like I walked away from it being like, why did you choose to be on this documentary? Like there was she took zero accountability. She was just like, that's how it was.
Right.
It didn't paint her well, and she didn't do a good job of like, I don't know. It didn't feel like a smart move from her. And also, just the utter lack of accountability was infuriating.
Yeah. It would have felt different for me too if there was more accountability.
Right. Because in some ways, like I understand we're reflecting on this thing that happened in the early 2000s. Society and culture have shifted a lot in the past, 23 years. To some extent, I understand the like it was of a time. But that justification only goes so far, especially without any accountability.
Exactly. Yeah. What about you, Coleen?
Yeah, I think you both hit kind of everything I would touch on. I think something else that stood out to me, and it's probably because like I value my friendship so much, was how the friendship between like Jay and Tyra sort of fell apart. And not because Jay did anything wrong, like wanted to step away from the show, sent what I'm sure he thought was a professional letter to let her know, like, hey, I'm doing the courtesy of like talking to you first before I try to step away, and then still had to do the show and was like roped in. Then when like, I think it was the producer for the documentary was like, would you like to talk about that now or talk to him now? Tyra was like, no, I should just call him, which we know she's never going to do. So I don't know, like a part of me was like, man, to have this wonderful friendship. And I mean, so Jay Manuel, who was like, I would assume they were best friends, and Miss J, who taught her to walk and like was on this show, like all of that just kind of went out the window for what Tyra's like perceived notion of fame was. And I'm sure there's 3 sides to every story. Like I'm sure there are things that we don't know as the viewer that, you know, are on her side. I certainly don't want to like overlook that, but I just was heartbroken for like the loss of friendships due to like that perceived like gotta get my next bag, you know? And so I just felt really sad about that because I was like, wow, I couldn't imagine going into something with my best friend or like thinking like, hey, this is going to be something huge. This is going to be incredible for us. And then like writing that friendship like out because of whatever reason.
Yeah, it was so sad.
So I was just so sad by that. And then, I mean, of course, everything you shared is also substantial. And I think a lot of those behind the scenes conversations, I think I too was hoping for a little bit more accountability, both from Ken, like as the executive producer, and from Tyra as kind of the show's origin story, like creator, like some semblance beyond like, oh, it was a sign of the times. Like, I also think there's room for more ethical, like reality television. I think this could kind of spark that conversation even farther. You know, when I watch reality shows that I like now, like The Circle, I think is a really fun one. I'm like, okay, there may be some harmful things said on that show, but I don't think the producers are actively putting them in dangerous or like harmful situations to make better TV. Whereas I think, you know, for this, that was certainly happening.
Right.
And so I think just thinking about like, okay, what's a sign of our times now, I think is like a really interesting like way to look at, you know, reality television, how things have evolved. And I'm not saying like we've come such a long way, because like there are certainly harmful like reality shows on air now that exploit, you know, women and men in a sexual way. But I think that it does just beg the question, like there has to be a way that we can do this that is still makes for good TV, for, you know, what the producers want, what the audiences want, but also leaves a shred of dignity and a shred of humanity for the people that are on these, like that want to participate in these ways to, you know, whether it's elevate their brand or, you know, create a new life for themselves. I think that was one of the hardest parts to watch for me. I remember watching, I think it was Danny say like, I had to get out of my situation and this was my ticket. This was my one way ride to do that. And then she was pretty much like, essentially like, she was the like black sheep of her agency because she had been on this show. So she didn't even get any gigs. Like
that was so surprising to hear.
Like, what?
Yes.
Like, how? And I thought she was so, I remember too, like watching her season and being like, her gap is beautiful. Why would they want to change that? Like, that's what makes her unique. Even Nigel Barker said that. He was like, I was super against it because like perfect is not like always the best photograph. Like having, you know, what makes us us is what's like truly beautiful. And I was like, where was that energy when that like season?
Exactly.
Not to mention the fact that like then the next season, I can't remember who it was, but they like were like, oh, you have a gap, let's widen your gap. Like,
yes, exactly. The gaslighting. I mean, I basically, it was like that. It was so obvious that they were just trying to play some game, and it's so horrible because like how this impacted people, and hearing how people who've been on the show couldn't find work in modeling at all because of how they got to be in these modeling agencies. I'm like, that was a level of heartbreak that I was not expecting. And I had no idea that happened, you know?
Yeah.
And I have a feeling that's more the norm in like the reality show circles. Like I've heard similar things with Project Runway, like how people have limitations on how they can use their name to promote their own brand and stuff like that. I'm like, what? Like they talk you out of like your own like authority and autonomy to be able to do things. It's just, yeah, it's heartbreaking.
Especially when reality TV, for the most part, and like I don't really watch reality TV anymore, so I can't speak to like current day stuff, but like, you know, it is to some extent scripted and molded in a way to create these like juicy good stories, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah,
you know, someone is kind of picked to be the villain or the dramatic one, and like if what the world is seeing, like you kind of get slotted into that, like the problematic, you're creating drama, like, or you're angry, or you know, the angry Black woman trope, whatever it is, then well, of course, like modeling agencies aren't going to want to touch you because they're like, what we see of you
exactly
is this narrative that like may or may not be true,
right? Yeah. And that the storyboarding that's a part of reality TV right now, I think is part of how it's evolved because, you know, people who were in the early 2000s going on reality TV before we had a standard and totally got exploited. Well, then eventually people were more like, I don't know, like trying to protect themselves. So then there wasn't like the quote drama because of that. And so the storyboarding, I think, is how there's kind of this like plan of drama. But the one thing that I've heard, I think mostly just like in like Bravo kind of reality TV, is that whenever I'd like watch a reunion or something, people would name HR, like how these shows have like HR and things like that. And I'm like, well, of course they do. But I never would have thought about that back in America's Next Top Model. Like if there's an incident, whether it's taped or not, there's like a process that they have now. Hopefully that's become more of the standard. I don't know, but yeah.
I'm just thinking too about like, I think, you know, we talked about this a little bit, but I think Shandi not being able to like call her parents or her mom.
Yes.
Like,
yes.
That too is just like gut wrenching. It's like not only was the exploitation so real, but the harm so real. And then they had no one to talk to other than like the potential people who would film them talking to them.
Right.
So like that must have been such a lonely and scary and isolating experience for each of those women. Because I mean, I imagine there are things too that didn't make it to air that were also pretty ugly.
Yeah. And these the people who were contestants, I'm assuming they were at least 18, but it didn't seem like many were any older than that.
Yeah.
Right. Like so young.
So young.
So young.
Oh goodness. Yeah. Heartbreaking. You know, the thing we haven't mentioned was I can't remember anyone's name, but that's just on brand for me. Someone mentioning that they were outed on the show as a lesbian. Yes. And another thing that I was like, dang, that was horrible, uncalled for, not acceptable. Has anyone taken accountability for that? You know? And no. Yeah. Wah, wah.
I don't know what happened with that network because I remember them saying the network that it was on. And
UPN.
I was like, is that even a network anymore?
I know.
Like, what happened to UPN?
I think they may have gotten bought out by somebody, like, and they melded together. But that was before we had streaming, and it was like the type of cable where we didn't have that many channels yet. And so it was kind of like Fox. It was like this before Fox became what it is today.
So I just Googled because I was curious. So it merged with which makes sense now. It merged with WB and then
that's right.
CW.
Yes.
I remember.
That's where Gilmore Girls was on too. Yep. Yes. Oh, goodness. Yeah, that's your all's generation, isn't it? Like that was all those shows on that network. Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
Wow.
Wild.
Memory lane. Where do we go from here? Like what are we going to do with all this information?
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like we chatted a little bit about like the ethics of reality TV and like what that means, for future reality. I wonder if like we each leave a message to our younger selves watching this show, or maybe to young people now who might be, inundated with different images of what the ideal beauty standard is. Maybe we can say like a few words to those young people, younger selves, or those listening or watching this later.
Coleen, why don't you go first?
I feel like the big thing is just to not believe everything you see, which I feel like our parents told us too, but now makes even more sense with how images are altered and how the perceived ideal of beauty is consistently changing. Like, I feel like every year it's something different, right? Like a different body shape, a different body style, different size, like what's chic, what's not chic. It's like, man, in the grand scheme of things, like life is about so much more, and like there's so many different things to occupy time than like being so hyper focused on those certain images or traits that maybe right now in this moment like you don't love about yourself. And I think that's okay too if there are things about yourself you don't love, but just I think leaning more into neutrality and like being like, well, this is how I am and that's okay. I think more of that would just do younger Coleen or a younger version of myself would have done me a lot of good.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
It is. I can go. The thing that I would say is bodies change, and let's normalize that. And there's much more diversity out there than the television or social media, whatever we're using, is giving us information on. And if something doesn't feel right, like lean into it, like don't just get sucked up into like what's trending and things like that. And something in particular that we haven't mentioned that probably was the most impactful for me, probably because of my like present age and stuff, was like the very end. And this is a spoiler alert. And again, I don't remember anyone's names. Was it Miss J? Miss J had a stroke, and just ableism and like the shame that Miss J described of not being able to walk, and how that part of Miss J's identity was shaken, and how isolated. And I can't remember Miss J's pronouns, so I keep saying Miss J, but how Miss J felt. But I felt also this like warm sense of camaraderie for the three who stuck together. They were no longer aligning with Tyra, but they were able to be friends and support each other, and that felt good. But yeah, just the even just the focus on bodies having to look a certain way and be like able to do certain things in order to be worthy. Like, let's continue to shake that narrative, and because our bodies are going to change. The end.
Yeah, I think, I mean, all of that, yes. And I think I would just add that there's not one like arbiter or like all-knowing entity that gets to decide like what is beautiful. Like all bodies are different and all bodies are beautiful, and there's not just one way that you can be beautiful. And I think like little Rachel hearing that, I think would have been really helpful. And then I think that like this documentary and reflecting on America's Next Top Model is a good reminder that all of us, like both young people, but also us as adults, like we need to be more critical about the media we consume and how we consume it. And like ask yourself, like, why is this entertaining to me? I think is a really important thing, especially with the rise of like AI generated media and like, kind of determining like what is real and what is not. Just being critical and asking yourselves those questions, like, how is this entertaining to me? Why is this entertaining to me? Why am I choosing to spend my time consuming it? I think are just really important things to keep asking ourselves.
Yeah, that's so great. That's a great place to stop. Is there anything else that you all have that we didn't unpack? I think we need to watch the E1 next.
Yes.
And see if there's anything else.
A little bit of a break before I do that.
Yeah, same, exactly. Yeah, it's really great to be able to look back and see how far we've come and things we still need to learn, right? So, Thank you, team. I appreciate your time.
Thanks.
So there you have it. I hope you enjoyed this last Diet Culture IRL on the Find Your Food Voice podcast. And remember, there is just one more episode of Find Your Food Voice left. That is going to be an episode where my team and I have our own letters to food. And we're also sharing some things that you have let us know that you have learned from listening to the show over the years. And while this is something that, we are ready to close this chapter, it's definitely bittersweet. So join us for this last episode. It'll be in your ears in 2 weeks. And until next time, take care.
Carvana's so easy. Just a click and we've got ourselves a car. See?
So many cars. That's a click-tastic inventory.
And check out the financing options. Payments to fit our budget. I mean, that's
Clickonomics 101.
delivery to our door.
Just a hop, skip, and a click away.
And what?
No better feeling than when everything just clicks.
Clicks.
Buy your car today on
Carvana.
Delivery fees may apply.